This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. We're doing this one again remotely because we are in a global pandemic. We continue to be in a global pandemic. And if you're a regular listener, then you realize that these conversations are, first of all, over the internet. I'm hearing some sort of artifact noise. I don't know what that is. And second of all, you probably also realize that I'm not publishing these like a metronome. I was basically a metronome for 13 years. Every 2 weeks, tick, 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 you'd have an episode come out. It's not working out that way now for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to put these out as they come, as they reveal themselves to me, and as I feel inspired to talk with people. And I'm inspired to talk to these two. I want to call them clowns, but that's degrading. I would speak to these two guys sitting there on their screen in their apartment. Brandon Kim went to UCLA, graduated, I think it was political science. Is that right?
Yeah, political science.
Yep. He's all set to graduate from the circus and has a freelance gig lined up at Arts and Letters in Richmond, Virginia. If you are curious and sitting at home, you can check out Brandon Kim's work at bkshungry.com. That's bkshungry.com. Brandon, the perspiring copywriter, and you heard his voice for a split second there. Say hello to the listeners, Brandon.
Hi.
All right, that's what he sounds like. Aaron Marshall, sitting to his right, to our left on the screen, also a West Coaster, graduated from Portland State University, currently interning for our good friend Greg Hahn at Mischief in New York. Although they're both working in Atlanta. I think they're pretty soon going to be working in their hometowns. I don't know exactly what the setup is for that, but everybody's working somewhere else right now. You can find Aaron's work at aaron@marshall.com, which is funny because he's about the one of the biggest people that I knew. He's about 7'12", and with the hair, he's 7'14". Aaron, say hello to the listeners.
What's up, y'all?
All right, so that's what Aaron sounds like. So, listeners and peers of these guys, I'm not playing favorites with these guys. I'm not just handpicking students. It's like, don't wonder why this conversation doesn't include you or why I chose them and not you. It's not relevant. Don't worry about the fact that, like, I wanted to have a conversation with these guys. This isn't the first time that we've had a podcast episode with current students or soon to graduate students. I just want to hear some perspective. I want to talk to them, and I would think that they have things that they can share with you, the listeners. And I just want to first start off, I just want to reflect on you guys' 2 years, first of all, because I know, Aaron, at some point you mentioned to me that when you came to the Creative Circus, you didn't really know much about advertising. So
no,
talk about the first 2 years and then what you think, and BK, I'm asking him first so you can formulate an answer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it is that you've learned? And how would you sort of summarize your experience in school so far in ad school?
Yeah, definitely. So I think in a way, like, I've already loved writing. I've already came from a writing background, but it was more like to be a sports writer and a journalist. And I think anybody who knows that and knows advertising as a copywriter, they're like almost nothing alike. So I think when I first moved here, that was one of the main things I had to kind of adjust to and learn, and how to write in a different voice, like less objective, more like emotional, how to like evoke emotions out of the reader. And it was definitely hard at first, but I think just the more I did it and the more like hands-on we were doing, I just got to really love what advertising is and how big of an audience advertising reaches. Because I feel like other than like religion, I think advertising can reach millions all over the world.
Interesting. I think it's provoking. I think it's okay to say provoke. I think the best work is provocative for sure. So I did mean to say at the beginning that I apologize to Spencer Linton. Have you guys been on the Spencer Linton Just Getting Started podcast yet?
I was
not.
Okay. All right. So for those of you who don't know, on the other side, Spencer started one with current students. I don't mean to tread on her territory. I meant to say that up top. So when you were in college, you were doing sports writing?
Yeah. So I actually got into University of Oregon for journalism, but then I didn't have the money, and then it was almost just going to be like I had to get a lot of loans, and I didn't think it was worth it. So I went to a community college, went to Mount Hood, which is in Oregon. So yeah, I was the sports editor there on the newspaper, and then that was where I was really getting my reps in, just like writing articles about like the basketball team, the like baseball team, the volleyball team, all that. But then it got to a point where I almost just didn't want to just write like what happened in last night's game, or like what's happening like nearby. Like I almost wanted to like write things that I wanted to talk about. And I know like as a journalist, you don't always get to do that. So I think by the time I got to my university, I was majoring in communications just because they didn't have journalism as a major. But then it was like mandatory that we had this elective that was like intro to advertising. And I think that was where I really learned like what a copywriter was, what an art director was. And I got to really, again, like get my hands on like that type of writing. And then I kind of learned like what advertising was, because I literally didn't know like anything about advertising. Like me as like a hooper and like an athlete my entire life, like I always thought Nike just had their own ads. I didn't know about Wyden and Kennedy back home. And so it was.
Wait, you did not know about them?
No, I didn't. No.
Right down the street.
No. So no, yeah. So it was just a little ironic to like already have that agency back home and some other ones. But then, once I actually learned what advertising was, and then once I had like an interest in it, I literally went all over to a bunch of different agencies, just trying to like ask around and just kind of learn like, what is it? Like, how can I get into this industry as a copywriter? And at that time, I didn't know anybody and I didn't have a book. So I think a lot of people were very nice, but they were just also very honest about like, if you don't have a book and if you don't know anybody, it's like super hard to get into this industry.
Right.
So then they kind of just recommended that I either go here or I go to Miami Ad or I go to the BCU. And I think me just, as a young Black man who's been in Portland, Oregon my entire life, like it was just kind of like I was ready to leave, but also I don't know if I would want to like basically go to Richmond and almost do that same exact thing. And like, that's not even a knock on Richmond. I just wanted to like live in a melting pot racially. Like I never got to have that. Like I was always like the only one in the room who looked like me. And
interesting.
Yeah. So I think just the way I got into advertising and the way I just moved here and just in Atlanta, Georgia, like it was just so weird. And it was almost like I did this all like just out of nowhere in a way, just because I had never left Oregon. Like I was there my entire life. So
wow.
I think as I've been in Atlanta, for me, it's been more rewarding than just advertising. Like I've got to like live now in a melting pot and I love it. Other than like the humidity here and the potholes and
oh God, the potholes. Did I tell you that my son hit a pothole so hard that he bent the frame of a $600 wheel on our Mazda? Well, that did occur, by the way. He's only driven a total of maybe 40 miles his entire life, and one of those was into a pothole. All right. So while I'm talking to BK, Aaron, I want you to think about what you think you've learned in the 2 years. I think that was a really interesting answer, though. It's funny. I moved from New York. I never thought of Atlanta as a melting pot, but I suppose it's more of a melting pot than super white Portland. All right. So BK, talk to me, man. So what's the experience been like for you? How did you find the circus coming from UCLA? And lean into the laptop if you can.
Yeah, similar to Aaron, I had no idea about advertising as a professional pretty much until like a week before starting at the circus. And I didn't even know what a copywriter was until week 2 of the circus. People kept telling me, oh, they're the same thing. And I was like, oh, why would I want to be a writer when I could be a director? It sounded sexy.
Yeah, that's a problem. Art director has that word in there that, you know, we've talked about this, you know, it's a big challenge is that in the graphic design world, an art director is the creative director. But in advertising, we have a different word for a creative director. It's called creative director. And art director is basically like a copywriter level. Anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah, and I never really thought of it. I mean, I watched a couple of episodes of Mad Men, and I was like, wow, I can't believe people get paid to, you know, be drunk and do that. But yeah, it wasn't until 3 weeks into my first job that I was like really hating myself. I reached out to some like older people that I knew with, you know, who probably knew more about different industries. You know, I'd always like thought, oh, there's like, you know, there's that tech business and there's that business, you know, like you could do one of those, I guess. And he introduced me to Jason, who came to the, you know, the circus last year, I think. We had lunch and he told me all about, you know, advertising and yeah, I wanted to do what he did, and he told me to go to portfolio school. I went to Reddit and found a couple people from the circus. I talked to them through Reddit. That's actually how I met Ashley Milholland. Shout out to Mel. She's awesome. She's
I genuinely, legitimately love her.
Super nice. Like this random guy on Reddit. I very well could have like been a weirdo, but she was cool. She was cool.
Right. Yeah. Turns out you are. So, yeah, I think you're a natural. I think you found your spot here. Before we go on any farther, though, I do want to ask you how your tooth is doing.
It's so bad.
So, listeners, this is a guy who's selflessly sharing his story through a badly swollen and horribly painful. I guess it's a crowned wisdom tooth that's coming in. It probably has an infection, and I'm worried about you, man. But thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sorry. So what do you think you've learned in these 2 years, and how is this different than the you went to like a pretty big university, one of the top schools in the West Coast. So how does this experience at the workshop environment of the Creative Circus differ from your experience at UCLA?
Oh man, I mean, to be honest, there are a lot of smart people at UCLA. But there are a lot of idiots, and I'd like to think I classify as the latter for sure. And while the resources are different, I think the energy it helps in a lot of ways. Like we don't have anything to rely on, right? It really does come down to a writer and art director just making stuff. You know, It's not like we have other schools to partner with. It's not like, you know. We have a list of credentials for everything we make, you know.
So when you say other schools, you mean like we don't have like a film division to go do your thing, or are you talking about we don't have like a big sound studio and all those kind of things? Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Even when it comes down to just making spots, like they tend, you know, like it's up to us, you know. And while sometimes it's harder, looking back, I do enjoy that a lot because there's no one else to blame at the end of the day, you know?
You know what? I want to say something about that because I hope there's a creative director out there listening to this because I don't remember whose spot it was. I'm terrible. I'm so terrible. But there's that Gain commercial someone in your class has that uses Rich as the talent and he's up on a hill. He's like the campus preacher. Who's the team on that? Do you know?
I think Pete.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Prendergast is a copywriter. So it's not well done, but it's so good. And like, it's basically like a rough comp. It's like the first shot is obviously shot on a phone. So the microphone is from far away and the second shot is closer. So the audio is better. It's very unprofessional looking, but I'm hoping that creative directors and recruiters that are looking at the portfolios from students realize art directors and copywriters, you got to be able to design. You got to be able to write. You got to be able to come up with a cool way to sell things and think about things. But I hope that creative directors are not holding our students up to the standard of being able to do sound design, blocking and lighting, a TV shoot, because aren't you guys going to be working with like a producer and a director? Yes. The answer is yes, you will be. So I love what you're saying about being resourceful because I think at the end of the day, it's about a pen, a piece of paper, and a computer, and you guys got to come up with something great. And I think that, I guess I'm trying to read between the lines and answer my question for you, which is like, what you've learned is how to solve problems and how to make things and not rely on an infrastructure, but also rely on each other and your own talent. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yep, I'd say so.
Okay. Aaron, what do you think? What have you learned in 2 years? Because I think you had possibly more I think you were starting at a cleaner slate than a lot of our students, almost completely ignorant of the business, no real reference point for it. So what have you learned?
Man, it's like hard to just wrap up in one sentence or two. But I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that anyone who's going into advertising, you need to know like this is an industry where ideas die more than they live. And I think as
you have no idea.
Creatives, it can be hard at times to, walk up there and you're presenting your like honest, vulnerable ideas. And then you have others say like, oh, I don't like this, or like this could be made better, or like live better, or just anything like that. And I think you definitely have to be resilient, and you have to be able to, be positive no matter what. Because there's a bunch of times when I've written like headlines, or like I wrote long copy or anything like that where I liked it, but like it kind of didn't get the response that I thought it would. And I think that's just something you just have to be okay with, and you're going to have to be able to keep going. Like, I think it's important that people know in advertising, you just have to be resilient. And I think too, you have to know like this industry, you're going to be working with a bunch of people at once. Like, it's never you. Like, I think as a journalist, like I was learning that just like, it was usually just me kind of just writing the articles. Like I kind of just, once I like interviewed everybody, I would just, write the article. But here with advertising, like I have a partner, I have an AD, and I know like once I get into the industry, there's going to be like a bunch of other departments that are like helping us make this idea live. So I think it's important that you have this mindset of like, it's never just about you. Like it's always we, not me. And I think I've kind of just had that mindset in general on life, but it's been nice to kind of easily kind of maneuver that into the way I work with my art directors. Like, I don't think I would have the book. I don't think I would be where I am without my art directors, and even the times that I've worked with designers too. So I think it's just important for me to acknowledge that and just let them know that I value them, because Lord knows I can't, just like make a bunch of mock-ups on Adobe or just be on Adobe all day. I'm pretty horrible at that. So I'm very happy and just. I
think the three of us are all probably pretty weak at the Adobe suite.
Yeah.
So because what are you wearing now? What team is this? Is this a Blazers shirt?
Yeah.
So like that's just it's such a perfect metaphor for you though, because you are a team player. Like I think as a basketball player, as a team sport athlete, you segue pretty well into the whole partnership thing. I have a question. I want to go back for a second about you saying that and either of you can answer this question, talking about how a lot of stuff dies. What percentage of the time as a student, this is me with my department head hat on. Actually, now I'm called a program director. Sorry, it's not called a department head anymore. What percentage of the time that you walk out of class or you leave a meeting, what percentage of the time do you know what you need to do?
I mean, I would say we know what we need to do, but it's almost as a writer, the answer just isn't already there. Like, I think as a writer, you just have to write and write and write. And then you kind of learn or see like where you're kind of leaning into. I
think it's Halloween. You remember when you're a kid, there's two schools of thought in Halloween. One is the kid who looks in his bag all night while he's walking around. The other one is he never looks in his bag till he gets home, then dumps it all out on the floor and sorts everything out. That's the way I like to approach copywriting. You're just the second kid. You just collect a bunch of shit, you harvest a bunch of thoughts, a bunch of pieces of language, and then the next morning you dump it out on the floor and you go through all of it on your screen to see what you like. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think there's no cheat sheet or like easy way out when it comes to writing. Like,
I love it. I love your
tags or headlines just to get maybe those like 5 or 6 lines that you think are a good thought, and then you're trying to think, how can I kind of make this live in a unique way that hasn't already been kind of.
I love that you said that, because there is a significant percentage of students who come to the school who are looking for the formula or the answer. Hey, listeners, if you're hearing that remnant audio, I'm really sorry. I don't know what's causing that. It's the internet. But there are definitely students who come that want to know, like, okay, what's the formula? How do I get there quicker? And like, it's sort of like you kind of have to, I always think of it, my brain always goes to these visual analogies of somebody with a shovel having to move gravel from one side of the parking lot to the other. At a certain point, that's sort of what it's like. It's just manual labor. So did you have anything to add to that, Brandon?
No, I agree completely. I do think a lot of it is just making and breaking. One of the teachers here called it as, I think you have to, I think he said something about like pressure test it, like just because you have a strategy doesn't mean it's good. You got to make something out of it to determine it's good.
It's interesting because I think both of you are really good about that first step. Brandon, I know that you and I have had a lot of conversations about leveraging insights. And I think that that's one thing that I think that will serve both of you guys really well going forward, because a lot of times you'll get a brief that might not have that insight, and hunting for that truth is really important. All right. So let's shift the conversation a little bit. Actually, I'm going to go, before we do that, I want to ask a question about what you were just talking about, Aaron, about collaborating. And about the team player stuff. How has it been in the COVID era with your partners? Are you seeing each other face to face? Are you able to collaborate easily, seamlessly? You guys are in a position of being a group that this happened halfway through your time in school. So you already had some professional relationships. I call them professional because they're relationships with partners from school. But how has that back and forth worked? Are you writing on your own and then sending stuff? Are you collaborating with open docs? How is it working just from a practical perspective with you guys working this way?
I think it depends on the campaign, but a lot of the times I do kind of write on my own. And then when I meet up with my art director, we kind of just hash it out, or I let them know like which lines I'm liking more than others, or like which lines that it may not be there yet, but I like the thought and I want to see what you think and how can we make this, a better line. But yeah, I mean, these whole, like, what has it been since like March? I think it's definitely been hard to have majority of your meetings like over Hangouts or Zoom, just because I think you kind of don't have like that same like energy that you have when they're right next to you and you're like near a whiteboard or you're just writing everything down. And I think at times me just like wanting to meet up with them, but knowing that's like not the best thing just for us to be safe. I think it can be hard at times, but I think just as like how the world is right now, it's probably best like this.
Right.
It's just up to us to like learn how to just adjust and to do it the best way that.
Right. BK, you're like me, where like, I think that it's not a huge percentage of time when you and I would be sitting with a partner that we're actually working. So like making stupid jokes under your breath or like talking about something not related, it just feels inappropriate in a Google Hangout or in a Zoom, because it feels like we're supposed to be working now. But like, have you found that to be a challenge? Like it's harder to be an idiot, a goofball?
Yeah, no, definitely. Similar to what Aaron said, like it's definitely been different. I do believe that now, it requires a lot a lot more daily communication, stuff like that. Like, oh, like, what do you think of this? Instead of waiting for the meeting to happen, things like that. Like Aaron said, like, I do miss having that energy. I'm a big fan of a whiteboard, and, I tried buying one, but they're like $60, so I didn't. So never really, I thought about buying a whiteboard for my house, but it's kind of expensive, so I didn't.
Wait, what's that? Isn't there some sort of virtual whiteboard? I forgot the technology. There's some app.
Whiteboard.
I can't remember what it's called. If I think of it, I'll throw it in the Facebook page for the podcast. I forget what it's called. It might come to me while we're working. I'll try to remember what it was. But like they had it at the one club, then they had these breakouts for the Educator Summit where you could basically put notes up on a shared board. And you could put images and you can write things and you can like do stickies. It's kind of a cool thing.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, God, I gotta try to remember what it was called. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt while you're talking. This is me actually while I'm editing this, hearing this part of the conversation. It's called Jamboard, and it's part of the G Suite, and I plan on using it a lot more.
I like that. But it's definitely harder to, have more fun, as much fun as we're used to having with it. Can't just sit in a room for 2 hours shooting the shit. It has to be a lot
Right.
more. It has to have a lot more purpose than that. I feel like now, you don't want to be in a Zoom call for over 30 minutes. And I feel like being on the computer like this for too long, it's mind numbing anyway.
It's extremely mind numbing. It's I find it to be a big fat bummer, but I'm enjoying this conversation. All right, so I'm going to shift gears a lot bit. I want to talk to you guys about being students and future professional creatives from non-dominant groups. I want to talk about what that feels like. I want to talk about being a Black creative. I want to talk about the experience as a Black student. I want to talk about whether, as an Asian American student, you think of yourself as being non-dominant. Do you think of yourself as having a voice that differs from the public or from your instructors? Talk to me about what the experience has been like as a student and what you feel like. Let's just start there. Let's start with what it feels like as a student. Aaron.
I mean, just to be honest, I think there's days, this has actually happened a lot in the past couple of weeks, but I think there's just days where like I'm so mentally out of it or exhausted that advertising just is one of the last things on my mind. And I have no issue admitting that. I think it's hard to wake up every day, and you, my mom and dad, back home in Oregon, and other people are always messaging me saying are you okay? Make sure you're not out late, or I would my life would be ruined if I ever lost you. And it's things that just hurt. And I hate at times having to wake up and just having that thought of am I next? Or is there another homie who looks exactly like me that might be next? And I think at times it's hard to balance that also doing homework, but also wanting to be a human being and just live life. And there's times recently where I've gotten emotional just from being overwhelmed. It's hard to hold in those emotions, but also just let it be known that there's days where I just can't really write, or I just can't think about advertising because it's hard to balance that with everything else.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about one of the things in my notes to talk about was just the year in general and how you stay focused and how you get your work done. I love that you're working with a guy in Greg Hahn who is capable of seeing this industry of advertising as a culturally powerful voice. Do you feel ever inspired, or are you too young or too overwhelmed to think this way, that you do have an opportunity at some point, not just to be successful how you look, but to craft messages that can elevate that conversation, that can move society and culture forward?
Without a doubt. I think that's one of the reasons I want to be in advertising, because of that huge audience and the reach that it has. I think if I had an opportunity to make a campaign or make an ad or to make anything that reaches a huge audience and it affects people to look at this thing in a new way, I think that for me is a dream. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to say it, but I think that is one of the main reasons I'm in advertising as a young minority, is to create work that, hits people and gets people to look at this thing in a new way. Because I think a lot of times, well, just really, I've talked to a lot of people and even mentors that told me they don't even like advertising and they're in advertising. So it's how can we make art rather than ads? How can we be difference makers rather than just people in advertising who are just making ads that just win awards and all that? I would rather make work that really hits maybe that, young Aaron who doesn't even know what advertising is yet, and doesn't know that his voice and his art and his writing can reach a lot of people and can affect people. I'll take that over award any day of the week.
That's really cool. Yeah, I don't want to name names, but there's been a pretty significant handful of, I would call them friends, past podcast guests who've told me what you just said. I don't like advertising, but they're the kind of people that are all doing work that, what's the best way to say this? advertising becomes what we think about. It's programming that we sort of, it becomes the voice of it reflects culture. So if you're reflecting culture from a position of empowerment of any kind of underserved group, it's a great thing. Mm-hmm. And me personally, I noticed AT&T uses sounds like a Black American woman as their like tagline. It says, okay, just okay is not okay. And when she reads that line, every time I hear that voice, I'm thinking there's a person who I know that doesn't sound like an announcer that's been whitewashed and cleaned up. It's like, it sounds like an honest human being. And kudos to AT&T for doing that, and other brands as well. So wait, one more quick question for Aaron before we move on, BK. And I'm scared to ask this and record it and share it, but I'm curious personally, if you've had a moment in school or anywhere in your life where you presented your truth, your vision as a Black man, and your partner or your instructor or someone in the room didn't buy it because it either wasn't on, they used the excuse of it not being the brand's voice or something else. Have you come up against that wall where you're being genuine to your life experience, but not allowed to be genuine to your life experience?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of a exact moment where an art director or a teacher just said, I don't get this, or I don't like this. I think there's been times where maybe like I'm just kind of like talking out loud and I have an idea that might just be from me, loving, 80s and 90s R&B music, or just me loving basketball, or me loving a thing where I'm just out loud kind of talking, and they may not like get it or relate to it. So they may just be like, I don't know about this. So I can't say that that's happened, but I'm pretty sure there's just been times where I've just kind of been talking out loud and I just maybe have just kind of said like, what about this? And I mean, if they don't get it right away, then I might just move on. But yeah, I mean, I think for us, that's always kind of a challenge, is like, when you're the only one who looks like you in the room, I mean, not a lot of people are going to like relate to what you're saying. And I think as a young Black man, it's important for me as I'm going into the industry to be able to make work that my audience can, relate to, or really just anyone can relate to. Because I think, people hate advertising. Like the world hates advertising. Like when you're watching like a show and then it like leaves and then the ad kind of joins in, like they usually walk away. So, and like a lot of people, like when they're just living their life in the world, they don't want to be attacked by ads. So just back to what I was saying earlier, it's like, as creatives, how can we make work that isn't advertising? And I think that's one of the biggest things that I think the industry needs to do a better job of, is because I see a lot of advertising all the time, and I see ads at times that the audience is themselves. Like it's not just like me as a human being just seeing this. Like it's almost like they're just talking to themselves, and that's not what I want to do. Like that's not why I want to be in this industry. Like I'm wasting my time if that's what I'm doing.
That makes sense. So BK, how do you self-identify? Do you identify as an Asian creative, Asian American? Do you think of yourself as in an underserved population? Does that become something you're aware of? Do you think about that? Is that top of mind? I'm very curious.
It's really odd because I grew up in Queens, where like there are a lot of Asian people, particularly a lot of Korean people. Then I moved to LA, where it's like, again, a lot of Asian people. It's a huge melting pot. And then I came to Atlanta, which was a little bit less so, but I was like, okay, like, no, this is like, this is still kind of a city, right? But then school was very different. Luckily, I think our quarter is really good in terms of having diversity and stuff like that. But as a school in general, I was like, wow, this is so weird. Like, I'm one of like, ever since like Julius and Andrew Bay left, I was like, dang, I'm the only like Asian dude here. Like, this is interesting.
There was a kid years ago, went to school, named Gabe Chung. I think he's from New Jersey, but he moved in high school to Tampa. And I remember saying to Gabe and I connected on video gaming and stuff like that. He's a really cool guy. And I said, oh, so you went from being Gabe to being the Asian kid? He said, yep. Because he went to Tampa. He said, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I'd say I identify as a Korean American dude. And the beginning half of my life, I always like tried to shy away from that, you know. When you're a kid, all you want to do is fit in. That's the bare minimum. That's all you want to do.
Yeah.
And my mom would always pack like Korean lunch, and I grew to become very ashamed of that. I would throw it out and try to get like a Lunchable or something like that, to fit in. And there's a lot of like tiny little stories like that growing up.
Yeah, but I bet that's interesting because that's probably a universal experience for a lot of kids. And I think that that's something that a lot of white America is just kind of oblivious to, right? That doesn't even cross my mind.
Yeah, I guess so. Mm-hmm. And, only over the last couple of years have I really come to terms with that. It's always been like, I was to my Korean friends, it was always like, you're a banana, you're a Twinkie, right? You're not Asian enough. And then, but on the other hand, I know I will never be, white American enough. So it was always kind of caught in the middle,
Interesting.
But
Very interesting.
think like what Aaron was saying, like, I think one of the coolest thing about advertising is that we can speak to a group that has not felt spoken to before, right? When he was talking about, making culturally like genuinely profound and not just manufacturedly profound work, I think of HBO did something about typecast with The Atlantic. It was a TV spot, and it was amazing, and it talks about how Hollywood and advertising part of it, we have put people in roles, manufactured roles for people to fill in, and that is only enforced a lot of like stereotypes and stuff, and only recently have we really gone out of our way to undo that. And I love that we're coming in during this time where we're trying to undo racial stereotypes on screen, things like that. I think it's really promising for us in that way that we can contribute to that.
Absolutely. Keep that shit top of mind. Keep that top of mind. Keep it top of mind. Anything to add to that, Aaron, before I move on?
I mean, I think he wrapped it up so well, but I think, Brandon and I talk about this all the time just because we live with one another. But I mean, we're always talking about like why we're in advertising and like what is our goals as like underrepresented voices. And I think a lot of what he just said is really holds weight. Like, I think it's our job now as we're going into this industry to create honest, vulnerable work that, people can relate to. And I think I would be hurting myself if I just make another ad, that talks about basketball. But, what about like the young girl who, doesn't want to give up basketball, even though she's young, but just the way our world kind of gives girls not the same kind of like encouragement. Yeah. I think that's actually one of my campaigns I'm working on right now. But, me as an athlete and like me as somebody who cares a lot about representation and like making sure like everybody gets the same shot and opportunity, I think we're hurting ourselves if we're not creating work that is for everybody, because it shouldn't just be for, the Black guy who looks like he's an athlete, or like I kind of lost my thought as I was saying that.
That's all right. I have a question for you, and you guys don't have to answer this if you don't want to. First of all, you're young. Second of all, you're not here to solve our problems. But here's how I'm going to phrase this question. If you guys are entering an agency situation and you walk into the place and you see you're probably the only Asian kid, you're maybe one other Black person, and that person's in like it's an account person or works in accounting, and you're the only Black kid in the creative department. What are your hopes and expectations of your creative directors, clients, and coworkers to enable you? Like, I'm assuming a lot of listeners are white people saying, okay, I'd like to be the right kind of advocate. I'd like to be the right kind of ally. And again, I'm not asking you to solve this, but personally, walking into that room, what's your expectation, your hope?
I think it's just to be, seen as a creative first, I would hate, no, for example, like one of the first people I reached out to, he's also a Korean guy. And he was telling me how like all of his partners at every agency he's been at was another Asian guy, and I don't know if that was done deliberately or not, but I'm okay with that to a point, and then I'd be like, is this like going to be a pattern or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to have I think at the end of the day, I'd like to have the same opportunities as everyone else.
Right. Same thing as a woman coming into an agency and gets to work on cars and isn't stuck on feminine products.
Yeah, exactly.
Not what you said 5 minutes ago, not typecasting.
Exactly. Being allowed to explore things that might not be my territory, because I think one of the best things about what a writer does is he's half of his job, their job is to, just dive into a mindset, a subculture, things like that. And that's so much of the fun, learning about these people.
For sure. Any thoughts on that?
It's so hard to answer because I think this is what everybody wants to know. Like as the industry is what it is right now. But I mean, you're seeing these agencies release their diversity numbers, and it's pretty obvious that like everybody needs to do a better job. And I think I've even talked to Brandon about this a lot. It's like, I don't want to be just hired for the way I look or because they want to check a box. But we were
wait, hold on. Is that because you don't want the pressure of representing everybody, or is that because you want to earn it, or is that because
I just want to earn it? At the end of the day, I am a Black man, but I'm just a human being who loves to write and loves a bunch of things, and I don't want to just be hired for the way I look or what they think that I'm going to be good at because of the way I look.
That's right.
So I think, it's like hard to answer, but I think
no, I'm going to let that sit. I think that's a really important thing for people to hear.
Give everybody a voice and don't just, hire us now because you see that it's a problem. Like you see that everybody wants to do it. But yeah, I was about to just say though, at the same time, I've talked with other people in the industry and they were saying like, this might be the first time in your life where the way you look actually might help you get hired. And I think that's really embarrassing, but that's where the industry is right now.
To piggyback off what he said, I say, that is true, that is definitely true. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with that now, I remember and just in general, it's used against you so many different times that I think there's nothing wrong with,
it's a course correction.
Exactly. It's an industry trying to correct itself before it's it gets to the point where it's a 0%,
And let me say something else. It's like, it's a business decision for agencies because clients are looking at the people that walk into the room, and they're not going to put out money for a group that's not diverse. And if I don't think the gold that gets mined is feeling too guilty about being mined. And I think that you're kind of at this point representative of sort of corporate gold. So I understand what you're saying, and I just can't help but comment on it. But I think it's a profound insight because you start to feel like you didn't earn it. Mm-hmm. I don't know anybody who works harder than you do. I don't know anybody who questions his own ability more than you do. I don't know anybody who puts the time and the energy into the work. So, fucking go for it, man. And BK's right. It's like whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Grab it.
It's about time it's been helpful for something,
if it helps you, Aaron, I would think of it as a tiebreaker. That's it. Like you got to have it, all things being equal. I'd rather have the Black kid, but they're not talking to you if you don't have the goods. So
No, yeah, which is, I think that is what means the most. And I mean, just me, recently joining Mischief, me and Node, I mean, I've been very happy. I mean, I've only been there now for a couple of weeks, but I think, there's only 8 of us and half of us are minorities. And I think I love the most that they care about representation. They care about nurturing like younger creatives, and they want to build a new model of an agency. And I think that's something I can definitely get behind. And Greg Hahn is already one of my advertising heroes. So it was
Mine too.
it was almost like a dream job to like have them want Node and I. But yeah, I know like they didn't hire me just because the way I look, because the things we talk about, the time they've invested already in these 2 weeks, and like the like reps they're allowing me and Node to have, it's just like, it's almost like a dream that you would want as an intern or a junior. Like we're getting to do a lot of work. And I think
really
that's
cool.
what you would want.
It's really cool. All right. So BK, I got a question for Aaron that has nothing to do with you. I don't think you're going to have an answer to this one. So listeners might have picked up earlier on Aaron's stutter. So Aaron has a stutter that I find it really fascinating that when you're in a flow and having a conversation, it's barely there. But when you're presenting work and reading work, it can trip you up, and your brain's withholding information from your mouth. And I want to talk about how you deal with this emotionally. What's going on in your head when you're presenting, and you feel like do you feel like you're stealing people's time? Talk to me a little bit about this. And after we talk about this, I want to share that the link for that conversation that you shared with me. That's just mind blowing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can definitely tell you that it's been hard. Like I've had one literally my entire life. So literally, every day is a new battle, a different battle. It's kind of like, how am I going to talk to this person? Like, how am I going to like kind of lead into it? Like, what words am I going to use? What words am I going to avoid? How am I going to listen to where I can remember things?
Wait, so you have certain sounds that are more difficult, and you're pre-planning to avoid those sounds?
Yeah, there's definitely words that are really hard for me to say. And even just being honest with you, saying creative circus is like hard at times. And, that's just me being very honest about, that's a word I have to say a lot because, that's where I am. So that says a lot, that even like a thing that I know so well, it's like hard for me to say. Even me, loving Red Robin and ordering literally the same one meal every time. There's times I'm ordering and it's hard for me to like get the words out. And I think at times they may like laugh and they're like, oh, like you don't know what you want. But I think just like as I've gotten older, I've kind of just gotten to be more mature about it and not letting it like hit me so hard. Cause when I was really younger, or when I was like younger, it was even harder. That's kind of how I got into writing at a young age. And I think it's definitely humbling to like know what you want to say, to have the words, but you just can't get them out. And then there's been numerous times where like, there's just times where, I mean, I don't think they were malice about it, but they've kind of like joked and they were just like, oh, like you don't know your own name, or you don't know your own number, or you don't know like what you want to order. And I think it's those things that like in the moment, it definitely hurts. Like, I don't think they really think about it as they say that, but me being open about it right now, I think that's important for me to, raise awareness, because I think it's one of those things that it doesn't get talked about a lot. And I think even now that Biden has been more honest about his, and it's, now it's a bigger, more well-known thing. Like now we're kind of getting the looks that, we should have had like years ago. But I think it's taught me to be vulnerable, to be empathetic, to not laugh at people, to treat everybody the same, to, just be a nice human being and not judge people. I think it's given me insight into other people's like own battles that they're living themselves. And I think from me having to learn that at a young age, because I've lived it, I've had people like laugh at me, mock mock me and all that. And I mean, it doesn't really hurt as much anymore. But when I was younger, that was one of the reasons I was definitely ashamed of my own voice, like ashamed to just get up and talk. And me, being a dude who's like super big with tall hair, I mean, I can't like eyes are almost always on me. So it's not like I can just go like hide under a rock. Like the attention can definitely be on me as I walk into a room. But
how tall are you?
I'm like 6'5" without the hair. So with the high top fade, I got to be at least like 6'11" or like
10 or 11.
7 foot.
You should tell the story. I think that's such an awesome story.
You want? We can cut that part out if you don't want to say something.
I mean, I could say it. I mean, just without saying names, I did this internship with 100 Roses, which I know Lisa was a mentor with it, so you know it well. But there was just one meeting where like we were in there presenting, and I just asked the question, and I think this lady just she didn't know that I had one, so it was just kind of like an innocent joke. But I think like I was talking and I was just trying to get the words out, and there was like one, I don't even remember the word, but I messed up on it, and then I think she just thought like maybe the internet was bad or like another thing. So I don't remember her exact words, but she was basically like, "Oh, Aaron, like is your internet like messed up over there? Like, or like are you having issues?" And then I just very directly, openly said, "No, this is how I talk. I have a speech impediment." And then her face got a little red, and then she apologized. I think it's those things like that. Like it's important for me and everybody else to be very open about it and not ashamed about it, and let people know that that shit hurts, man. Like just be nice. Like don't joke, because you never know like what that person can actually like have in their head.
Dude, that's so interesting to me that the only difference is that yours is a parent. I mean, there's a Chinese proverb that says, approach everyone with kindness, for everyone carries pain. So everybody's got some shit. Yours is just there.
Yeah. And I've said this numerous times. I've told people, if I could go back in time and get rid of it or just remove it, I would not, because I've learned so much as a human being, back to what I was saying earlier about just being nice to people, being vulnerable, being empathetic or empathetic, and just using that in my work. Like I think my NSA campaign, that's so important to me, because those weren't ads. Like those weren't headlines. Those are things I've lived like every day. And those are things that millions like me live every day. And it's important for people to know the emotional weight that it holds for us. And I think just as I was talking about Joe Biden, like this is the first time in my life where I've seen this topic now actually have like an enormous kind of spotlight. So, it's important for me to be honest, to be vulnerable about it, and let people know, like, this is the way I talk, and that's fine. Like, I can live with that.
I find that so cool that you say you wouldn't remove it, because it's like removing part of your own identity. It's almost like, what would you change? Why would you change it? And one of the things I thought was so fascinating on the This American Life podcast with Jerome Ellis is when he said he has like this reverence for his stutter. Like he thinks of it as a beautiful thing with its own mind of its own that he has to kind of do this dance with for his whole life and try to figure out a way to reconcile, live with each other. He says, when I try to outsmart it, it figures out another way. And it's like he's almost impressed by his own brain's ability to do this dance together. And it's kind of a gift to an artist in a way. He treats it like that as an artist. And I'm not saying it's a gift. I'm not saying it's a wonderful thing or anything. I'm just saying that living with that will teach you things that no one else has the benefit of learning, which is really pretty interesting.
Oh yeah. Over the years, I'll just add this last thing, but over the years, I've definitely had thoughts about, who's going to hire this dude who at times can't even read a whole line without messing up, or can't even say his own name, and all this other shit. But I'm just very happy that, I have the chance to work with Mischief, and just, that this isn't getting in the way of me getting hired. Because, I have definitely, at night had those thoughts, or just during the day had those thoughts. It's like, is this going to get in the way of me becoming the version of myself that I want to be.
Yeah. Well, it is who you are. And it's really cool the way you've kind of reconciled and lived with it. Guys, thanks for talking with me. I really appreciate you guys spending time and sharing your experiences with me and both of my listeners. So I really appreciate that very much. Once again, Brandon, thanks.
What?
Say just for waking up early, dragging yourself over to the laptop. Listeners, it's bcashungry.com. Aaron, your vulnerability is inspiring. Your hair is equally so. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us this morning.
Appreciate the invite.
AaronAntMarshall.com. Listeners, make sure you follow me on Instagram and on Facebook. The show is available on Spotify, which makes things easier for people sometimes. Reach me as always at danspodcast@mac.com. Hope to have another conversation very soon. Until then, fellas, good luck in your ventures. I hope both places hire you guys on forever. Hope you change the world, and we're going to be seeing you in award shows pretty soon. Thanks again, guys.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Listeners, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.